I do no harm to myself, my family, my community, other families or communities who live in peace and unity with others. I am protection.
Based on the established research, statistics, and also on the interviews that I've done with sex offenders, what we find is that the first thing that typically occurs is that there's this establishing of trust between themselves and the caregivers, the parents, and also trust between them and the child. And just a very intentional, we're talking about, an intentional manipulative relationship from start to finish. And so this building of trust period is very thoughtful, finding ways to, be seen as the go-to person, the person that the child will run to for help with things. This could look like, and not always, but the favorite uncle, being the big brother to the family, offering, babysitting or helping out, a single mom with 4 children, who could otherwise not find anyone or pay anyone, and just being this person that really is feels like a helper and a kind and generous person to the family, let's say. Or just somebody who's fun to be around for the child, and really create an environment where when you're at my house, you get to do whatever you want to do. When you're with me, you get to say whatever you want to say. You want to tell me about things that are inappropriate that other people don't listen to, I'll listen to those things. And so after there's a trust built, then there's a grooming behavior that tends to begin, where the sexual abuser is looking to see how suggestible, how allowing the child is going to be toward behaviors that are more inappropriate. And so this oftentimes starts out with something indirect, like tickling, and then tickling a little bit close to the thigh, or playing around, doing horseplay and accidentally touching the buttocks, or landing over or on top of the child, and just establishing a bit of comfort around being in close proximity, around a lot of touching, but nothing that's overt, nothing that's clearly sexually inappropriate. And then once there's been this opportunity established where the boundaries of space and physicality sort of have been opened up, or even something like a sexual abuser might expose the child to pornography, or accidentally expose themselves to the child, or accidentally walk in on the child going to the bathroom or taking a shower. Things like this sort of then make it easier for the next thing to occur. And so once there's been enough grooming behavior where the abuser feels that they have an opportunity and a chance and a sense that they understand the dynamics of the child, that they understand how fearful the child is, how curious the child is. I mean, you're talking about a person who's an adult with an adult mind, and understanding that if you touch someone in a sexual way, even a child can feel aroused, and they don't have an understanding necessarily of what that is. And so playing off of even this innocent physicality of a child, where they're going to feel pleasure in the abuser doing things to them. And so then there's never an overt having the child do things a lot of times to the abuser. It's more of the abuser doing things that might satisfy the curiosity or the physicality of the child. So when there's, and it's very diverse, I mean, there are lots of different ways that they're grooming, but just so you have this idea, once that's established, then the more overt and inappropriate sexual behaviors occur. And at some point, the child does become resistant to this behavior, because it's becoming more uncomfortable, because it's more forceful or more threatening, or whatever the situation. And at this point, the adult abuser or the older child abuser has established a sense of trust around the family, and the child knows this. And so there's this manipulation around their fear of being caught having done these things with the abuser, and a sense of shame, unfortunately, that children can feel about what they think they've allowed to occur, which has all occurred because of the manipulation of an adult or an older child that knows what they're doing. And so at this stage, then is where a lot of active abuse can occur, and a lot of threatening and finding ways to keep the child from reporting. And this unfortunately can last, a length of time until it's discovered that the abuse has occurred.
Grooming is the process by which a child molester gains control of the child for purposes of molesting him, and oftentimes part of that process is also grooming the family. Grooming is a non-violent process. It doesn't involve the child molester hitting the kid. It typically doesn't involve the child molester threatening the child. It doesn't involve the child molester stalking the child, making the child fearful. No. What grooming involves is making the child feel comfortable with the molester. And the way the molester does that, the way the pedophile does that, is to first be friendly to the child, present a friendly ear to the child. Typically, these children who are molested are kids who have problems in their home. Sometimes they have problems with self-esteem. What's the best thing you can give a kid with problems with self-esteem or a kid with problems in the home? What you give them is attention. That's the first thing that happens. And that attention first is compliments. And the compliments are followed by spending more time with the child, doing a favor for the child, doing the child's homework. That follows by small presents, McDonald's hamburgers, buying the child a pair of sneakers. Then the molester sometimes at the same time moves on to groom the parents. Because what a molester knows is in order for me to get this kid where I want him, I need to have the parents feel comfortable. Parents, though, are really in an impossible situation because most parents don't see it coming. They just view this person as a nice guy. They view the offer to babysit as being one of, oh well, what a nice teacher, what a nice scoutmaster, what a nice priest. Or the priest who wants to come in and say prayers with the child in his room, what a nice guy. And they don't realize that this is a way, slowly but surely, getting that hook sunk deeper and deeper and deeper. And then what follows, and sometimes it's the same time as the present start, is the innocuous touch, the rub across the arm, the tousle of the hair, the slight embrace. You'll find sometimes people say, I always thought there was something weird about that guy. He was always hugging the kids. Well, that's the way that they start. It's a little embrace. And then when the molester sees that the child is not opposing it, they go a little further and go a little further till when they start touching the genitals or the kissing. And so that's what starts. And by the time the touches go from what the child thinks is an accidental touch or just a hug to the actual sexual touchings and sexual acts, it's way too late. The kid can't get out of it. The kid starts believing, why would a person who I trust do these things to me unless it was right? So the sexual abuse becomes normalized in the child's life, and the kid doesn't see the need to report that abuse or to tell his parents about it, unless it's really making the child feel uncomfortable, and you only see that when the kid typically is getting a little older. And then what will happen is the kid will feel embarrassed, because he'll think, maybe I'm gay if it's a man on a man, or if it's a girl, she'll think maybe people think I'm a slut if I say something, or I'll be blamed. And so then the grooming has done its job, and now the child is in the clutches of the person who's going to destroy his future.